program before, you're in for a real treat, and I think you know that too, because that's why you all came. So enjoy Rebecca Miller.
All right. Okay, Elgin has 1,784 streets, so we got to get started if we're going to get them all done today. Ready? A, Abbey Mist Court. Just kidding. We're not going to go through every street today. We're probably not going to go through the street that you live on, but we're going to go through some streets that you all know about, and we're going to talk about them and some buildings and some other big Elgin names and kind of see where we get our names from here in town, okay? So let's get really started. In every town, it's fun to take a look around and wonder who or what the streets, buildings, and local sites are named after. And here in Elgin, we have quite a bit to talk about. So let's first start with the name of our town, Elgin. It came from town founder James T. Gifford's favorite tune. Now, Gifford was a Presbyterian, and he was familiar with a hymnal used by the Church of Scotland since 1564. The hymnal had 77 musical arrangements that could be matched with a series of psalms. The tunes and the psalms were interchangeable, and some of the tunes were named after Scottish cities. Oh, you fixed, okay. I felt my mic go silent there. Some of the tunes were named after Scottish cities, and one of them was the song of Elgin that Gifford liked best. He liked it so much that he knew someday when he founded a town, that's what he would call it. So the inspiration for James Gifford's favorite tune was Elgin, Scotland, located on the River Lossy, just east of Inverness. Some say it was named after Helgen, the Norse general who founded the settlement in the 10th century. Some say it was named after the Gaelic pronunciation for Little Ireland, and it reflects the ancient Scots that came by way of Ireland originally. Either way, Elgin was soon the cathedral seat of the bishopric of Moray. The Cathedral of the Holy Trinity, shown here, was built in the 1300s. Elgin's castle was the reputed scene of the murder of King Duncan by Macbeth. With the railroad, Elgin, Scotland's population doubled, and today it has about 25,000 residents. The community is known for farming and distilleries. It has an Elgin Academy and an Elgin Museum. There's free admission at the museum if you want to check it out. There's also international Elgins in New Zealand, Australia, the UK, South Africa, and Canada. But enough about them. We're going to talk about the US, okay? There are other Elgins in the United States too, not just ours. You can plan a trip to the other Elgins in 11 different states. Here, there are also a few unincorporated areas or ghost towns that are referred to as Elgin. Most of these other Elgins were named after us. Our Elgin was famous for manufacturing pocket watches, many of which were used by railroad employees. Their influence, combined with the easy spelling of the name and the quick pronunciation, led to several other Elgins popping up along the rail routes west of us. That's the story that happened in Elgin, Minnesota. When a new railroad branch reached that place in 1878, the town was named Elgin after us. Similar story for Elgin, Kansas and Elgin, Texas. There is, though, a different story for Elgin, Oregon. Elgin, Oregon is located in the Blue Mountains, and the railroad town, it was a railroad town, but it was first, the railroad served the fruit growers and lumbermen of Eastern Oregon. Elgin, Oregon is named after a melancholy song about the wreck of a vessel on Lake Michigan in 1860. Do you know the name of the wooden-hulled steamship, sidewheel steamship, that sank in Lake Michigan off of present-day Winnetka in 1860, resulting in 300 casualties? The Lady Elgin, that's right, the steamer Lady Elgin. So different story for Elgin, Oregon. What about Elgin, South Carolina? Those of you who lived locally in 1962 may know that Elgin, South Carolina got its name and how it got its name. In that year, the Elgin National Watch Company announced that it was opening a new assembly plant in this small village. Excited for the opportunity, the village renamed itself to Elgin. What was the name of that town originally? Blaney, South Carolina. So the name has stuck. It's still Blaney, South Carolina, but the assembly plant for the watch factory closed after only 5 years. So 62 to 67. How about Elgin, Arizona? Elgin, Arizona has only a population of 169. But in 1948, a movie starring John Wayne, Montgomery Clift, and Joanne Drew was filmed there. John Wayne stars as Tom Dunstan, who's attempting to drive his 10,000 head of cattle to market, but soon his tyrannical behavior along the way leads to a mutiny run by his adopted son. What was the name of that film? You can cheat if you can read Italian. I didn't want to make it too easy for you to cheat. Anyone? Red River. Red River. Yeah, filmed in Elgin, Arizona. All right. So now that we've covered all the other Elgins, we're going to focus our attention on the best one, Elgin, Illinois, and we're going to start with our streets. Now, as I go through this, you're going to hear street names. You go, oh, there's another one. I'm not going to ring a bell. I'm not going to raise my hand. I'm not going to ask you to keep count, but you're going to find out that many, many of these street names are going to ring a bell with you just as we go through these names of famous people, okay? So James Gifford, of course, we have a Gifford Street, Gifford Park, Gifford School. James Gifford arrived with his brother in 1835, and he was our town founder. He platted his settlement on the east side of the Fox River, and he was responsible for naming some of our first streets, including the one he named after himself. Division Street marks the dividing line between Gifford's claim and that of Phineas Kimball to the north. Gifford assumed that the main business district would be up the hill from the river and out of the reach of the spring floods. Therefore, he made it the center of his plat. Center Street was meant to be the center of his plat. Simon Newton Dexter of New York bought part of Gifford's claim in 1838. While James and Laura Gifford lived on the east side of the river, the Kimball families of New Hampshire settled on the west side of the river. Joseph and Nancy Kimball brought apple graftings from their old home, which their son Samuel Jewett Kimball developed into a large orchard. Jewett and Orchard are streets near St. Lawrence School that you might recognize. St. Lawrence Church that you might recognize. We have other streets named after, after the Gifford and Kimball families as well. Notably, we have Ann Street, named after Mary Ann Kimball. She was the first settler to die in Elgin, and Fulton Street is named after James Gifford's son. Even the Gifford grandchildren, Stella, Jay, and May, have their own streets. But what of Raymond Street? Here we have Laura Raymond Gifford. She was the matriarch of the Gifford family. Is Raymond Street named after her? No. Sorry, Laura. Raymond Street near the old Watch Factory Observatory was named for Benjamin W. Raymond, the first president of the Watch Factory. But I suppose Laura could pretend it was her, right? So speaking of the Watch Factory, we of course have National Street, named after the Elgin National Watch Company. The street ran right past the front entrance of the building, and the National Street Bridge was built in 1870 to accommodate all the workers who lived on the west side. We also have Watch Street, of course. But did you know that Ryerson Avenue is named after a Chicago capitalist that kept the firm going in the early years? And Hunter Drive is named after George Hunter, the production superintendent of the watch factory from 1872 to 1903. Or how about Hecker Drive, named after Joseph Hecker, who was the director of the famed Elgin National Watch Factory military band. Hopefully you can draw a picture in your mind of where all these streets are. I was going to show you maps, but that's too much, right? You know where all these streets are, hopefully. Now, some of our street names are more about where they led to, okay, than where they are. We, of course, have Chicago Street, takes you to Chicago. Dundee Avenue, you know how to get to Dundee, right? And St. Charles Street, they tell us exactly which way they're heading. Now, Highland Avenue once had a very different name, and it reflected its trajectory towards a well-known lead mining community in Western Illinois, just 4 miles from the Mississippi River. What was the name of that town and former name of Highland Avenue? Galena. Galena. That's way before our time. No, hopefully nobody here knows what was called Galena Street. So sometimes the shape of the land lends itself to a name as well. Elgin's Mountain Street has a steep slope on the west side of the river. And there was once a natural spring downtown. So those street names seem very logical. We have a Lake Street. So did we once have a lake? Not quite, okay? Elgin's Lake Street preserves the memory of William Lake. He was a pioneer resident whose cement house still stands on the corner of Lake and Michigan. Now, Lake and Michigan are kind of short streets. You maybe haven't traveled down them. They're behind the Grand Victoria parking garage. But on the northeast corner of that intersection at 300 Lake Street is a building that many scout troops and local school classes toured back in the day. Do you know the name of that business at 300 Lake Street? The Courier News, that's right. So this is a group of kids from the YMCA in March of 1970 who toured the Courier News to learn all about the exciting world of journalism. We have 5 streets in Elgin that are named for Chicago Cubs players: Lockman, Banks, Monday, Kingman, and Mercer. But we have 7 streets named after our own former mayors. Maybe you didn't vote for them, but surely you have traveled down one of these streets: Taft, Bowen, Price, Hubbard, Miller, Shales, and Alft. Now here is a photo too. There's a local celebrity there on the bottom there. And the other guy I'm told is Ernie Banks. The local celebrity, and then the other guy's Ernie Banks. So where's our local celebrity? He's somewhere. There he is. That's Paul Larson and Ernie Banks. So, yeah. So we know they're both real. They're in a picture together, right? Yeah. Okay. Now, the Elgin Road Races began in 1910. Organizers defined an 8-mile route which started on Larkin Avenue by modern-day Larkin High School, and the auto racers went north on McLean, west on Highland, out to Coombs, south on Route 20, and then back on Larkin. These races lasted 2 days and culminated in the National, a race of 26 laps. In 1910, the National was won by Ralph Mulford, and today we have a Mulford Drive, just east of Lord's Park. We also have a Grandstand Place. It's a short street just west of the Jewel grocery store behind Walgreens on Larkin Avenue. Today, you'll find a few medical office buildings there and lawyers' offices. But during the road races, you would have found road race fans there sitting in a large wooden grandstand, hence the name of the street. Yeah. Let's do some schools. Elgin's first schools had rather functional names, not very creative. The First Ward School, Bent Street School, the Watch Factory School. But after the 1890s, those kind of names fell out of favor, and the trend was more towards national or patriotic themes. That's how we have our Franklin School, Washington School, Columbia School. These are all patriotic and national words. So this is Franklin School at 37 South Geneva Street, and they're school kids in 1910. This school originally opened in 1891. It's still today a fine functioning building, but it's not a school. It's another kind of institution. Does somebody know what this building is today? It's the Community Crisis Center. Yeah. So they've done a really good job taking care of it and keeping it useful. On the near west side, we used to have a school informally known as Slop Hill School. And here we have the 5th grade class from Slop Hill School in 1954. The school's nickname referred to the area between Lawrence Avenue and Mill Streets, where in the old days, frugal German settlers used to collect the runoff from the nearby dairy plants, dairy operations. They fed this slop to their pigs and chickens, okay, as it ran down the hill to the river. In 1898, the principal of the school said, we can't call this the Slop Hill School. This is the children. Think of the children. So they renamed it to something more patriotic. In fact, it was presidential. Does anybody know what the name of the Slop Hill School became?
That's my class. I know, I graduated with those kids.
I
was in the other class.
I thought we had some local friends in this picture. I didn't know if it was you. I thought it might be somebody else, but yeah, okay. So you know these people?
Yeah.
Well, tell them they're famous. They're famous. So the school was eventually torn down in 2006. There's a park on that site today and a plaque that tells the story of this original school building. The building, of course, dated back to 1855 originally. So it's just up on Lawrence Street when you come across the Kimball Street Bridge. You can see the park and the plaque. So a lot of our schools are named after educators. The Abby C. Wing School at 260 Center Street was named after Abby Saunders Wing and was Elgin's first school named after a local person. The others were like presidents and such, right? Abby Wing was the first woman to serve as principal of Elgin High School. And upon her appointment, she served in that post beginning in 1865. We also know about Wing Street, Wing Park Boulevard. These are all named after Abby's husband, William H. Wing, who donated 121 acres of land to the city that became Wing Park. We have other schools, though, that are named after educators. We have Harriet Gifford Elementary. I know we have some alumni from that school in the crowd, too. Harriet Gifford was Elgin's first school teacher. She was the sister of James T. Gifford. The school is on the west side near the intersection of Larkin and McLean. T.A. Larson, Emmy U. Ellis, Ronald O'Neill, and Myrtle Huff were also teachers who were honored with schools named in their honor. Now, Lowry School is not named after a teacher. It's named after a former school board president and newspaper publisher, Adam H. Lowry. Other school board presidents who had schools named in their honor included Dr. Edward H. Abbott and Vincent Coleman. And perhaps you know those schools today, a middle school and an elementary school. Now, let me tell you one last story about a school before we move on. This is the story of a high school. In 1962, a new West Side High School was opened to alleviate overcrowding at Elgin High School. This new high school was to be called Elgin West, which of course meant that the existing school on Chicago Street had to now be called Elgin East. That was not popular with the students or the alumni Maroons. Their protests led to a new name being chosen for the West Side School, one that did not make it necessary to change the name of Elgin High School to anything else. You probably know the new school was ultimately called Larkin, okay? But do you know why? And no fair saying because it's on Larkin Boulevard, unless you can elaborate. Cyrus Larkin. So Larkin High School is named after Cyrus Larkin. He's an early pioneer that used to farm the land on which the school would be built. Now, Cyrus Larkin was a generous donor, but Cyrus Larkin did not donate the land for the high school. He died in 1902, well before that time. When we say that he was a donor, we mean his donation to the Elgin Children's Home in 1902. The Elgin Children's Home was a turn-of-the-century orphanage and children's care home. It was originally located at 352 South State Street in a home that Larkin donated. He did that in honor of his mother. When the home outgrew the building, it moved to what is today 1212 Larkin Avenue, a building that still stands. So Cyrus Larkin has the street named after him, the school, that area was where his farm was. And of course, the Larkin Center, the Larkin Home for Children is named in part of his family legacy as well. Other farmers got streets named after them, but not schools or children's homes. Maybe you're familiar with farmers Finla McClure, Hugh Todd, or John McLean. I go both ways. I don't know if you have, I don't think there's a consensus on that here in town. But let's look more closely at McLean because as Al and I like to say, West Side, Best Side, right, Al?
West side, west side.
West Side, Best Side. Okay.
Oh, shit.
Can you make, I mean, you got nothing. I got this. Okay. I know this is hard to see, but I wanted to kind of walk you through it. Okay. John McLean was an influential leader in Elgin's dairy industry. He served as a road commissioner, town trustee, school director, justice of the peace, and founder of the Old Settlers Association, which is the forerunner to the Historical Society. So we owe this guy a part of our legacy. He also served as the vice president of the Elgin Board of Trade when it was founded in 1872, and he was the president of the Illinois State Dairymen's Association. So after his death, his descendants continued to farm the area, but their holdings shrank. Their home was occupied by family until 1951, and it was raised in 1998. Today, a BMO Harris Bank sits on the site of the old McLean farmhouse. So you can see here, just with our quick drawings, you can see McLean Avenue, you can see Highland and Larkin, and then Hugh Todd, where Todd Farm Drive is way up there, it's circled in purple. Finlay McClure, he's circled in white. That's roughly where McClure Avenue is today. And then the McLean Farm is there in green. So some farm legacy in Elgin, which we don't want to forget. What about some of our notable buildings? The Hemmons Auditorium has an interesting story regarding its name. Hattie Pease, seen here in the star, was an Elgin High School graduate from 1883. She was the granddaughter of a prominent banker and distiller. Hattie would later marry a successful coal dealer, Walter Hemmons. They lived at 467 East Chicago Street and had no children. When Hattie died in 1957, she left the city of Elgin a surprise, over $1 million. Her will decreed that the money be used to establish a not-for-profit community building and auditorium. Therefore, our Hemmons Cultural Center today. Now, Fountain Square, 0 stars. Fountain Square at Douglas Grove in Chicago was our first public center. It was known as Market Square originally. The word square was just shorthand for like public business district, because as we know, it's not square, right? Beginning in 1873, it had a fountain fed by a spring. It's circled right there in red. The fountain was removed in 1903 due to increasing business in the intersection. The fountain was returned in 1967, removed again in 1994. And so if you do the math on that, Fountain Square is not square, and the fountain has only been there 30% of the time. So therefore, sign my petition today to rename Fountain Square to anything but Fountain Square. No fountain, no square. But we do the best we can, right? Now, how about this building? You might recognize this building. This is the Elgin City Hall, and it was renamed the Robert Gilliam Municipal Complex in 2014. Bobby Gilliam served as the Elgin City Councilman for 25 years, 1988 to 2013. He played an important role in the building of the new police station at Douglas Avenue, the building of 7 new fire stations, and the acquisition of a new public works building. He was also a supporter of downtown growth and affordable housing, and he was a significant voice in the decision to build the new water treatment plant. Question: is that water treatment plant located out by Judson University also named for him? No? Do you know what its real name is? No. Technically, it's called the Leo Nelson Riverside Water Treatment Facility. So who's Leo Nelson? City manager. Yeah. It's one way to get yourself remembered, put your name on a city building. Now, Walton Island. The island in the middle of the Fox River near the Hemmons is named Walton Island. But let's talk about why. Up until 1930, this beautiful island was just a muddy patch of scrub grasses. In that year, 1930, the newly formed chapter of the Isaac Walton League here in Elgin, a nationwide conservation organization, spearheaded an effort to enlarge and stabilize the island by dredging the river bottom and creating fill and creating a park. Therefore, the island is named after the chapter and its work. Isaac Walton League, Walton Island. Bluff City. We have a Bluff City Cemetery, Bluff City Boulevard, but we used to have other things with a similar name. Bluff City was an early nickname for Elgin. You might not notice them so much today, But maybe if you're traveling up National Street away from the river, between like where the Metra and State Street is, it's quite a hill. We had a significant number of bluffs or rises in the land, especially on the west and southeast banks of the river. Therefore, that became one of our city nicknames, the Bluff City. It made perfect sense for our first daily newspaper to be named the Daily Bluff City, and for us to have a Bluff City House Hotel. And in 1875, we even had an amateur baseball team called the Bluff City Baseball Club, known as the Bluffs. So not a nickname we use anymore, but still has roots. Now, Elgin's Public Library is named after Gail Borden. You probably knew that. Maybe you've heard that story before. There's a nice picture of him. In the years before the Civil War, he worked to make food safer and more portable. While his first product didn't go very well, it was something called the meat biscuit. It was dried and pulverized meat. It didn't take off, okay? But his second idea did. He had a way of packaging and shipping fresh milk to make it so it lasted. He sweetened it, took the water out, condensed it, added sugar as a sweetener, and essentially created condensed milk in a tin can. That wouldn't spoil, it could be taken on trips, and it was safe for others to drink long after the milk would have spoiled. So Gail Borden was not originally an Elgin guy, okay? He's got connections to Connecticut, he's got connections to Texas, but he ends up here because of the influence of his third wife, Emmeline Eno Church Borden. He needed to build a factory to market this new product in the West. This is the West at the time, just after the Civil War. So Emmeline says, hey, I know a town. It's got a great river with lots of clean water. It's got a lot of dairy farms and it's got a railroad. You really should move your factory there. He says, I love it. Where is it? He ends up here in Elgin to build his factory. Now, the condensing plant opens in 1860 and becomes a key part of Elgin's dairy story. Now, Gail Borden actually dies before he can move to town, but his legacy lives on because his company was here and his stepsons, the Alfred and Samuel Church, so Emmeline's children, in 1892 donated money to the city of Elgin to establish a public library, with the stipulation that it forever and always be named after their stepfather, Gail Borden, in recognition of all the jobs that he brought to Elgin with his condensing plant. So that's where our name comes from. No plans to change that anytime soon, I'm sure. How about some music to our ears? Radio station call letters sometimes have a story to tell. What about here in Elgin? WEPS. The radio station, founded in 1949, was operated by School District U46. Any guesses on what WEPS stands for?
Elgin Public Schools.
Elgin Public Schools. It's not the most creative of names, but it told the story, right? WRMN 1410 on your AM dial was founded in 1949 as well. Its call letters stand for three very specific names. Does anybody know that one? The children. Do you know the children's names? Richard, Mary, and Nancy. And I hope that's in birth order. Otherwise, I hope he didn't have a favorite there. But Richard, Mary, and Nancy. And they're actually the children of founder George Ralston. But your guy comes up next, okay? WJKL was founded in 1972. Now, this radio station originally played album rock, but then it switched to big band in 1950s music, which from the newspaper article I read was not popular with the listeners at the time. I don't know if anybody has a personal story about that, but apparently people weren't happy when they switched away from rock to big band music. But its call letters are an abbreviation of owner Richard, is it pronounced Jekyll? Jekyll. Richard Jekyll's name. So.
When did that start?
So WJKL 1972.
And they went to big band.
Yes, not very many years after. Yeah. Yeah, also like in the late 70s, early 80s, they went to big band. And I think the teenagers of Elgin were not happy. If you believe the newspaper articles, which I do. Okay, what about business names? Are there any businesses who have an interesting story to tell with their name? I'll be honest, I looked really hard to find a business in Elgin whose name had something exciting to tell you, okay? I only came up with one example, and I'll show you that one in a minute. But quite honestly, most of our business names are just the name of the people that founded the business. Woodruff and Edwards. Guess what? A guy named Woodruff and a guy named Edwards. The Speece department store, the Speece family. Exactly. Or they are a reflection of what they make. The Elgin Butter Tub Company made butter tubs. Elgin Metal Casket made metal caskets. Those are the bulk of the stories that I could find. But I have one really specific and cool example of a different kind of business name. The National Watch Company. Doesn't quite sound right to us, does it? The National Watch Company. Now, the National Watch Company was founded in 1864. Its headquarters was in Chicago, and its factory was here in Elgin. The National Watch Company sold its first watch in 1867. And soon the company was well known for its beautiful precision watchworks. But when customers went to a store, a jeweler, and asked for a watch, they very rarely said, give me one of those national watches. They said, I want one of those watches made in Elgin. And very soon the company figured out that the word Elgin was the memorable part of the product that they were selling. So they changed their name in 1874 from the National Watch Company to the Elgin National Watch Company, which I think, of course, sounds better to our ears today, right? The Elgin National Watch Company. And there's a nice picture from across the river in the 1930s. So we are moving along at a good clip, but I have some other different kinds of Elgins to share with you today. Elgins of a different sort. We are going to start with Elgin Baylor. Now, Elgin Baylor is not an Elgin guy. Elgin Baylor was born in Washington, D.C. Now, he was, Elgin Baylor's father had named him after his favorite pocket watch. He played 14 seasons in the NBA before becoming a coach and a league executive. He was the #1 draft pick in 1958 and Rookie of the Year in 1959. He is considered one of the 50 greatest players in the NBA. Here is a picture of Elgin Baylor with his team when he played with the Lakers. This is a picture of the 1971 Los Angeles Lakers. We see Elgin Baylor of Washington, D.C. in the red circle. He's in the back row. Also in this picture is Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West, the inspiration for the NBA logo. But there in the front row, in the blue circle, is someone else near and dear to Elgin's heart. In the blue circle is Flynn Robinson, Elgin High School class of 1959. Flynn Robinson was 6'1", and he went 15th in the NBA draft in 1965. I gotta believe that Flynn Robinson made sure to tell Elgin Baylor what they had in common, right? That's, in my mind, it happened. It happened. I'm sure it did. Next is Horace Elgin Dodge. This is the co-founder of the Dodge Motor Company. His middle name was Elgin. Now, Elgin had a Horace Dodge dealership, a car dealership, at 222 South Grove Avenue in 1954. It later moved to 970 Villa Street. Horace Dodge was obviously very proud of his name because these were not Dodge dealerships. They were Horace Dodge dealerships or the Horace Motors Dodge dealerships. Here in town, I get it, but sure would have been nice if he'd put Elgin in that name. I mean, why don't the cars say Horace Elgin Dodge on them? I get it, but he obviously was proud of his name. We can tell that our local one had his name on the top there. So Dodge Motors is now part of what major car brands? Anybody know that question? Chrysler, that's right. Ever since 1928, when Horace and his brother John died. So Elgin Baylor was born in 1934. Horace Elgin Dodge was born in 1868. Is anyone naming their babies Elgin today? Do you know any baby Elgins? I'm guessing that you don't, okay? Because the Social Security Administration reports that Elgin is not one of the 1,000 most common baby names in the US. But it was ranked as the 715th most popular name for a baby boy in 1905. So I don't have any cute pictures of baby Elgins to show you, but if you manage to get your child or grandchild named Elgin, I'll put them right here in this slide, forever and always. So you send me their picture of your baby grandchild Elgin. Okay, on to another kind of Elgin. The Elgin 6 was the first model car manufactured by the Elgin Motor Car Corporation of Argo, Illinois. That company was in business from 1916 to 1923. The company was founded by the executives of the Elgin National Watch Company, and the cars were advertised as being built like a watch. But the company went into receivership in 1924. So, but they did make approximately 16,000 cars, and there's a few that they believe are still in good running condition. And it was called the Elgin 6. We all know this one, yes? For the car shop? Really? Did they all look like that? They only made one model?
It looks like that.
Yeah? So when I was doing my research, if you can believe anything on the internet, they said that like as classic cars go, they're like expensive, like over $100,000 if you try to buy one. Yeah. Yeah, they said there was 6 of them, according to one internet article I read. So 6 is left, I think. The Elgin cut. Now, the long rectangular stick of butter that we're most familiar with in this part of the country is called the Elgin cut. It was not invented here, but its name reflects Elgin's importance as a 19th century butter manufacturer. If you buy butter west of the Rocky Mountains, the sticks are shorter and fatter, and those are called Western stubbies. And they're a result of the development of the dairy industry in California in the 1970s. So if you buy a butter dish off the internet, there's a possibility it could be the wrong shape. So you got to watch that. All right, just a few more to go here. The Elgins were a Motown group active in the late 1950s through 1967. Their most successful record was Heaven Must Have Sent You in 1966. Oh, Mark wanted to sing. Do you want to sing that one for us? Do you know that one? Heaven Must Have Sent You, which I think I've heard. It must be pretty popular. Their name was suggested by Motown hitmaker Berry Gordy, who was a fan of the Elgin National Watch Company. Now, the group that became the Temptations, they wanted to use the name the Elgins, but they did for very briefly. So you might read that in their history. But Berry Gordy told the Temptations to save the name the Elgins for these people, because I think Berry Gordy thought this was going to be the big group. I think he was a little wrong on that, but regardless, there is a group called the Elgins. Now, the Elgin marbles, this correctly pronounced the Elgin marbles, are a collection of ancient Greek sculptures from the Parthenon and other structures of the Acropolis in Athens. They were taken from the Ottoman Greece Empire between 1801 and 1812, and they were shipped to Britain by agents of Thomas Bruce, the 7th Earl of Elgin. They're now held in the British Museum in London, where their possession is quite controversial. And finally, the Elginia mirabilis, a genus of large pseudo-reptiles that went extinct 250 million years ago. Known as pre-dinosaurs, skeletons of these herbivores have only been found in one place, Elgin, Scotland, which brings us right back to where we started. So around the world, all about now, I will take easy questions and compliments. Easy questions and compliments. What do you got? Any questions? Really? Are they as close together as our Elgin and Dundee are?
Relative.
But I know that you went to the distillery, right? Did you go to the distillery when you were there?
No,
Oh, okay.
and if I want to tell him. Yeah, it's kind of that soccer player who came, visited the village working. He was actually staying somewhere in the Missouri.
Yeah, right. Yep.
You'll have to add Pappas Court to your Cub players.
Oh. All right, I will. So we're up to 6 now. We're up to 6. Are they all in the same neighborhood? Yeah, okay. All right, what do you got?
Forgot, here's Roebuck, had a whole line of products for farmers called the Elgin line.
Oh,
And Richard Sears, who started Sears, was a depot master in Minnesota, and one night, watch salesman left his luggage that had all of his watches in it, and the rules back then where you got like 2 claimed it, and nobody claimed it. Richard had this box full of watches. He started selling them, made more money selling watches than he was making as
Oh,
a
that's
depot
true.
master. And eventually, when he got into his line of business, he thought about the Elgin watches that were sold in almost every jewelry store in America. And he realized if you put the name Elgin on his stuff, people out in the middle of nowhere who were perhaps illiterate farmers,
yeah.
mama would come out and want to get a butter churn, and she had her little catalog came in the mail, and they look at it, and she's got this one and this one, and then so then there's this one Elgin. They make a great pocket watch. They got to make a great butter churn.
Yeah, right.
Buy the Elgin.
It's the early days of influencing, right? It's like today's.
Couple of quick side notes, but bringing schools into play. My granddaughter, so I expect to at least get her on the photos, is named Kimball.
Oh.
My son.
You told me that.
Daughter-in-law. That's where they first met, was at Kimball Junior High School. I will see Kimball tonight, maybe sitting in the spot.
That's cute. I like that. Yeah, I forgot you told me that.
The
Yeah.
other side, I went, first came to Elgin in 1961, was Abbey C. Wing School. I always am so grateful. Sorry if I get emotional, especially on two. I came from all white Ottawa at that time, and would go to Wing School, and was surrounded by people of color. And so my best friend immediately was the black kid that sat behind me, Floyd, and we had our neighborhood group. It was the farm club. Floyd, black, Ambrosio, Ramiro, Manuel, Mark.
Oh, funny.
But we had an undefeated grade school basketball team, and we only had 9-foot-high ceilings. So every Friday we would walk across, the Kimball Street Bridge and go practice at Grant that had regulation size ceilings, in their gym. And get hit by the cinders coming from Woodruff and Edwards. So just pulling all those history together.
So Slop Hill School wasn't so bad. They had a better gym. Do you have one now?
No.
Oh, I thought you did. Any other questions?
It's relatively minor.
Yeah, well, and Gifford, though, he's gone by 1851. I mean, the big gone. So I mean, so I guess he did what he could, right? But we still remember. Yeah. Oh,
I babysat for Jerry West and Elton. Yeah.
wow. All right.
They lived in my neighborhood growing up.
That's crazy. I think that's a wonderful coincidence that I just stumbled upon that when I was researching this presentation the first time I did this months ago, is that and I only because I know who Flynn Robinson is. I was just reading, I was actually looking for Wilt Chamberlain in the names of all the players. And then I saw Flynn Robinson. It can't be the Flynn Robinson, but sure enough, to have them both in the same picture, I think is kind of fun. So yeah. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. Mark.
Yeah.
If we're interested, maybe it's your street name. How do you suggest researching where your street name came?
So the street names, a lot of the times, there's never a formal, if there's a formal decree, like when the city renames a street, we're going to be able to find out about that really easily. That's not how most streets are named, right? These things show up in people's family legacies or obituaries or newspaper. Yes, or newspaper articles, or sometimes we just sort of piece it together. Like we were just talking the other day, David and I, about what Congdon Street is named after. And we're like, well, one of those shoe factory guys, his last name was Congdon, so that's gotta be it.
Well, and
The subdivision up north, all the streets are named Mark and Deborah. And all.
Yeah.
It's the developers.
It's the developers, it's the developers, yeah.
now I do remember hearing the story about the Cub names, which are Country Knolls West. The developer had his plan all ready to go to the council for approval. And that afternoon, a couple hours before he had to present, somebody reminded him he had to have proposed names for the streets. And the Cub game was on the radio. That's how those names. So if there's no other questions, everybody, there's still treats out there, David. All right, there's still some dessert on the table. Help yourself, and thank you for coming.